Let's look a little bit more at this breath practice at the nostrils before we go back to the meditation. So again, for this I'd like to read a little bit from this book, Attention Revolution, on page 47. It says the following. However you choose to count the breaths, when your attention stabilizes to such an extent that you no longer experience lapses of attention, but remain continuously engaged with each inhalation and exhalation, you can stop counting. That temporary crutch has served its purpose. Asanga commented though, Asanga was a great Indian master from the 4th century, he said, commented though that the various methods for counting the breaths are not for everyone. They may help some people to counteract laxity and excitation, but others may find that they can focus their attention quite effectively on the breath without counting. Such people don't need to bother with any of the above counting techniques. So again, if you find counting the breath or noting the breath helpful to stabilize, use it, bring it in, use it. But slowly, as we get deeper into the practice, we'll need to slowly let go of it to go further into the practice. But if you find in the short term it's helpful, bring it in when you need it, and then slowly we can let go of it. Some people find from the very beginning it's not helpful, then we can just leave it out altogether. As your mind calms, you may find that your respiration becomes subtler, and this results in fainter sensations of breathing. The further you progress in this practice, the subtler the breath becomes. At times it may become so subtle you can't detect it at all. This challenges you to enhance the clarity of attention. In other words, you have to pay closer and closer attention to these sensations in order to stay mentally engaged with the breath. There is a kind of biofeedback process at work here. If your mind becomes distracted and you get caught up in involuntary thoughts, your breathing will become coarser, resulting in stronger sensations which are easier to detect. But as your mind calms down again, the breathing and the sensations that go with it become finer, and this once again challenges you to heighten the degree of clarity. Mindfulness of breathing has this unique biofeedback advantage. So that's one of the advantages of using the breath, is that you may have noticed that when your mind starts to calm down, your breathing becomes more subtle, which means the sensations here get more and more subtle, which challenges you to improve the clarity. But likewise, if your mind starts to get agitated, then the breathing often will, because of that, get more coarse. Sensations are easier to detect, and that's going to help avoid getting distracted. So we have this sort of biofeedback loop that helps us to improve clarity and also helps us to reduce distraction. And then he says, various physical sensations may occur in meditation. Sometimes you may feel that your limbs are extremely heavy or thick. Sometimes your body may feel very large, or you may feel like you're floating or levitating. Other sensations such as tingling, vibration, or heat are common. You may experience telescopic vision, viewing your body as if from a distance. Especially when you meditate many hours a day, you may experience within your body prana or vital energy shifting and releasing pockets of tension. When you engage in mindfulness of breathing, these energies begin to balance and flow naturally. This is a process that takes time, and while the energies redistribute themselves, their movement produces various sensations. Don't be worried about them or make a big deal of them. These are natural consequences of the practice. So again, particularly the shamatha practice, as we are calming and focusing the mind, what's also happening because of that is that the subtle energies in our body are starting to balance. Now they tend to be a lot out of balance. But in the balancing process, that can cause a lot of various physical sensations happening in the body. As he mentioned, sometimes you can feel your body feels very heavy, sometimes very light, sometimes very big, very small. Sometimes it feels like you're floating. Sometimes you get a lot of vibrations in the body. Heat is very common. You have many different experiences, physical experiences, that are a byproduct of this shamatha practice. But as he said, the recommendation, of course, is don't make a big deal of these experiences. Because often what happens is sometimes these experiences are very pleasant. You know, you have a blissful flow of sensations in the body. People go, oh, that's so nice, I like that, I want that. Or sometimes the sensations can be quite uncomfortable. And then we have aversion. So whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or strange, don't get caught up in these experiences. They'll come and they'll go. Just let them be, let them be. If there is a particular physical experience you're having in every single meditation, then we may need to check if we're doing something. Often it's because we're doing something a little bit strange with our posture. So check then. But you'll find that these sorts of experiences here, they'll come and they'll go, particularly as we get deeper into the practice and the energies are balancing. That'll cause all sorts of physical experiences to happen. Again, not make a big deal out of them. The practice of shamatha involves results in an anomalous kind of attention. Normally when the mind is relaxed, attention is slack. And when it is aroused, this brings with it a state of tension, a tightening of the body and mind. But in this practice, the more you arouse your attention, the more deeply the mind relaxes. There's a relatively egoless quality to shamatha. While other activities that call for a high level of concentration are effortful and often goal-oriented, shamatha entails doing almost nothing. You're passively attending to the sensations of the breath without regulating it in any way. Your ego is mostly taken out of commission as you let the body breathe of its own accord, exerting only a subtle degree of effort to balance attention when it falls into laxity or excitation. As you advance in the practice, increase the duration of each meditation session and decrease the number of sessions each day. Always go for quality over quantity. So in this retreat, we are doing 20-minute sessions. And I think as a beginner, that's often a good amount of time. It gives us enough time to get into the practice, but not too much time that we're simply just drifting into dullness and distraction and losing enthusiasm. So in our practice, we always emphasize quality over quantity. So how long to meditate as a beginner will depend on us as an individual. Some of us may find 20 minutes a little bit long. Others may find we can meditate actually a little bit longer. One way to tell if we're meditating the right amount of time is our enthusiasm to practice the same at the end of the meditation as it was at the beginning. If it's dropping off, probably we're meditating too long. And also, if our normal experience is that at the end of our meditation, our normal experience, oh, I could have actually done a little bit more, that's often a sign we can do a little bit more. But always emphasize quality over quantity, and of course the deeper we go into the practice, we'll need to extend the amount of time we meditate. But when we extend, don't double it. Don't go like from 20 minutes to 40 minutes, maybe 3 to 5 minute increments. So we slowly increase the amount of time the deeper we go into the practice. So that's just a few comments. I think there was a question over here first.
We were talking about having glimpse of emptiness, and then the meditator gets afraid.
Yeah.
And now you were talking about, I had an experience in Vipassana, like a floating balloon, that in a minute it will explode and me.
Yeah. So one of the experiences. Here he talked mainly about physical things happening in the body, but also what can happen, particularly in the shamatha practice, particularly also more with the practice that we're going to do tomorrow and the next day, is that our normal sense of self is constantly reinforced by two things. One, solid sense of body. You know, this is me. And we usually always have a solid sense of body. But if we sit down to meditate and we relax the body and we start to focus on the object, often this solid sense of body can collapse. And also, the other thing that reinforces a sense of me is mental content. We're constantly reinforcing our sense of me based on our thoughts, emotions, memories, and so forth. And they're usually non-stop. So we usually have a strong sense of me based on solid sense of body and continuous mental activity. But again, as we meditate, particularly in the shamatha practice, the body settles down. Sometimes a solid sense of body can dissipate, no sense of body even. And then in the shamatha practice, particularly as we go deeper into the practice, there will be periods where our mind goes quiet, no real thoughts and emotions coming up. So suddenly, there's nothing reinforcing a sense of me. No solid sense of body, no mental content. And then often when that happens, people get a lot of fear because their normal sense of me, the person, is vanished. But this fear is completely irrational, because if there's no me, you can't have fear. So the fact that you're experiencing fear proves you exist, so you're not going out of existence. But this experience, if we interpret it correctly, can be a little bit of a bridge into the Vipassana practice. So simply having a quiet mind and no sense of body is not an experience of nature of reality. But that experience, if we're sort of very intuitive, can lead us to understand, well, actually, there's still awareness here, even though there's no thoughts and no sense of body. So actually, I'm none of those things, because I'm still here. So that can lead us to break down a false sense of me, and it can lead us into the Vipassana practice.
Yeah, I just want to understand, what is to retain? What's the restore? Is to restore your attention to the
Retain is to retain an ongoing flow of mindfulness. So not just to restore attention and then go into dullness again, is to keep the mindfulness there, retain the flow of mindfulness, continuous mindfulness.
And what is this energy you're talking about?
Subtle energies in the body, in Sanskrit prana, sometimes called chi, and of course that's what is being worked with in things like yoga, tai chi, qigong, acupuncture. They work with these subtle energies. This is not an energy that can be measured by any instruments of modern science. We're not talking about gravitational energy or anything like that. It's a subtle energy, and from a Buddhist perspective, this subtle energy also has a relationship to the mind, and so by balancing the mind, we balance this subtle energy and vice versa. But there's a lot more to be said about that, but generally this subtle energy work, we only do this consciously in Buddhism at the highest level of practice called Tantra or Vajrayana. So here we're not specifically working with subtle energies. Well, what I'm suggesting is that shamatha practice can have a beneficial effect on them, balancing effect.
I have a question about the three techniques of meditation we did. As someone said before,
Three techniques in terms of the three breath,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
three different breath ones?
Yeah. Someone said before, and I accept that the third method was easier for me to, with the nostrils, to be focused for longer. My question is, should I try to do the third technique because it's easier, or try to concentrate more on the two first ones?
Good question. Even though each one of those methods is particularly suitable for one of those qualities. The full body is particularly suitable for relaxation, and the abdomen is particularly good for stability, and the nostrils is particularly good for clarity. That doesn't mean as an individual, first we have to start full body, get relaxed, then move to the abdomen, stabilize, and then move to the nostrils to improve clarity. We don't need to do that. So if we find that the nostrils from the very beginning works well for us and we can stay quite relaxed, we start there and we keep going there. So we don't need to go through those 3 stages. It's just that each one is particularly suitable. So we pick the one that works for us. If we find from the beginning nostrils is very good and we can stay quite relaxed, we start there and just continue there.
So the one that makes us the best focus is the best method for us. Usually.
Yes, but the condition, of course, is that if we can focus best with the nostrils, but the only way we can focus is with tension, then it's not the best. we don't want to stay here, even if it's super clear, with tension. Because if you stay here with tension, and you keep doing that over and over, you're going to build up a very bad habit, and it's going to be very difficult to overcome. So we don't want to stay here with tension. So that's the only condition in terms of the clarity.
How do you know there is a tension? I don't know.
You don't know.
How do you know that there is a tension when you're not relaxed?
Yeah. Of course, there are many levels of this, and the deeper we go into practice, the more subtle levels we'll pick up. You know, we talk about relaxation, but there are many levels of relaxation. You know, we start to relax, and then we go, okay, now I'm really relaxed. And then we meditate some more period of time, and then maybe some weeks later we go, oh, now I'm really relaxed. And then we just keep going. Same with tension, is that some of it's very obvious, and then there's more and more subtle levels. And it's through improving mindfulness that we begin to pick up more and more subtle levels of not only dullness but also tension. So it comes through practice to pick it up.
You said that the more we go into the practice, the prana levels go up, but the
No,
breath...
not up, they get more balanced.
Oh, okay. Because in yoga, you get prana through the breath, and then if the breath becomes calmer and you take less breath in, then you necessarily take less prana in.
Yeah, we're not talking about taking prana in or out.
Yeah.
We're talking about prana that's within the body and balancing that.
When I started meditation and like, okay, I focus, alright, and then I have a thought, I feel like here, like warming on my chest.
Right.
So how can I avoid it while I do the meditation?
How, I didn't quite catch it. You have a thought comes up and then you have some experience.
Yeah, like when I focus, that's sometimes that I can separate myself, but after a while, I have some thought coming in,
Right.
and I feel it on my body here, like warm in my chest.
Right, so you're
while
like,
I do the meditation.
so you're like focusing on the breath, for example,
Yeah,
and then the thought comes,
and
and then you have some sensation in the
Yeah,
body because of that thought.
it could be from the thought
Yeah.
or from the
I mean, generally, mental events have a corresponding something happening in the body. You know, when we get angry, we have a lot of tension. You know, there's usually a corresponding physical aspect to the mental event. So whether it's a thought that carries us away, or an emotion, or we get carried away by some sensation in the body, the same. We just let it go and go back to the object. Let it go and go back to the object. In the shamatha practice, it's just that if we notice we have a thought and there's some tension in the chest or something, we just let that go and go back to the object, whatever we're focusing on.
avoid the thought, like
No, not avoid, let go of it. I mean, we're not, in this practice, it's not a matter of avoiding thoughts or trying to make the mind still. It's a matter of focusing on the object and not getting caught up in the thoughts and just staying with the object. And if we do get caught up in the thought, let it go and come back, let it go and come back.
Would you say that at home we should choose one area to focus on, or according to the day, some day you need more relaxation, some day you need more focus?
Yes, I mean the general recommendation is find an object that works for you and stick with that. That's the general recommendation. That is with the idea to go much deeper into the practice, because if we keep changing the object, it's not as effective to go deeper. But having said that, there are a couple of things we can do. One is, of course, let's say we're focusing here, and that sort of works well for us. But on a particular day, a lot of agitation and tension, we're trying to focus here, we're trying to relax, it doesn't work. There's no point in staying here if we're agitated and tense. Then we may want to, for that session, just that session, move down to the abdomen or full body, relax, relax, relax. When we're relaxed, come back to the breath, to the nostrils. So that we can do. Also, tomorrow we're going to look at the practice of observing the mind, and then after that, the practice of resting in awareness. These are 3 different objects for shamatha practice. So what we can do is, it's good to learn each one of those, because each one have their own unique benefits, and then we can use that practice if and when it's really helpful for us in terms of the mind practice to help us to not get caught up thoughts and emotions and so forth. But if we want to then really go deeper and deeper and develop a higher level of mindfulness and attention skill, then it's best to pick one of those and work with that, and rather than just keep changing.
If we cannot relax and the concentration is not going well, I know it's not like in Vipassana that we go to the place that bothers us. Is it so like here also in the concentration? Like if there is a physical pain or emotional pain and I cannot relax?
Yeah, of course.
I cannot come back to because again and again and again.
Yeah. So therefore, as I mentioned before, it's good to have to have balance for this shamatha practice, because often a lot of these difficulties can be more effectively dealt with other practices. You know, the loving kindness, compassion, the wisdom practice, and so forth. So it's good to have those practices there. So of course, in the first line, if we're doing a shamatha practice and something comes up physically or mentally, we let it go, let it go. Particularly mentally, if we let it go and we can't really let it go, then we can use one of the other things as sort of the next stage to try and deal with that. So it's good to have a number of things available to be able to deal with particularly strong mental things that are coming up in our mind. And of course, there are a number of levels of trying to deal with it. One, of course, just let it go, come back, and then we can be more trying to apply an antidote and so forth. But then the sort of the last ditch thing is that, you know, for example, if we're just completely sort of falling asleep and we can't arouse the attention, or we're just completely getting caught up in that, and whatever we do, we can't deal with it, then to break the meditation and do something about it. But that's sort of the last thing to do, because we don't want that as the first thing, because if every time things get a little bit difficult we just stop, then we're not developing perseverance. You know, we need to develop perseverance.
Yeah, but also with working with the people like with cancer, and when the pains are all over the body, they can't concentrate.
Sure, exactly. So yeah, so we have a number of these things to work with. Yeah, we have a number of approaches that we can use to try to work with that. Yes.
I didn't understand about the three shamatha. If I'm comfortable with breathing to this session with all the body, just continue that. That's it. I don't have the aim to come to the nostril.
Yeah.
To,
Yeah. You can use that. What you may find is that if you're focusing sort of everywhere in the body, you may find that, yes, you get very relaxed. You probably find you can get quite stable, but you may find it a little bit difficult to really improve a lot of clarity. But if you can, then you can stay with that.
So there is an aim, an intention to go to the nostril.
No, the intention is to develop a relaxed, stable and clear mind. That's the intention. That's the goal.
So if I'm in my body, I don't improve my clarity. Or
You could. I mean, you have to be the judge of that, if your clarity is improving or not. And everyone's different. So we're not saying that you have to go to the nostrils to develop clarity. As a generalization, you probably find that the nostrils is easier to develop clarity than the abdomen or full body, but we have to see as an individual what works for us, that's all.
so to stick with what works for, because every week, every day is something else comfortable for me. It's like, oh, no, on my body, and then not the stomach, never, but it's from here and all the body, like something like that. And sometimes it's changing in the meditation.
Right. But again, I think it's helpful to experiment with each of these variations, and then you'll get a feel which one really seems to be the best, and then I would stick with that. And only, as before I mentioned, only shift out of that if we get a problem. Like if, let's say that the nostril seems to work best for us mostly, but then on a particular day we're very agitated and we can't release that by staying here, then we can shift back to the abdomen or full body, maybe for some minutes to relax. Maybe we need to do that for the rest of the session. But do that as long as we need to relax, and then we can go back to the nostrils. But of course, if we can relax by staying at the nostrils, we just stay there. We don't go back to relax unless we have to.
And if it's the opposite, like it's comfortable with my body, I can go to the nostril in the middle of the.
Why would you go to the nostril?
Like I feel relaxed with all the my body.
Right.
After maybe I'm getting a little bit
Sleepy.
so to go.
So what you can do then is at the
That's a question.
what you can do is, as the beginning part of your meditation, is to go into the body for 5 minutes to really relax, and then shift to the nostrils for the rest of the session. So then the bodies are like a preparation for the main event.
When I pay attention to my nose, felt more clarity, but I also felt the clarity of my thought,
Yep.
my mind.
Yep.
And then
Good.
I felt more hooked.
More.
Hooked.
Oh, hooked.
But it was more clear and more. So every time I felt like I have to come back, it was so clear. Okay, but I come back. So it was more interesting and more creative.
Yeah, exactly. So again, if you're focusing here, you get more clear. Of course, you're going to notice thoughts more, even more subtle thoughts that you never registered, but that's okay. So the thoughts of themselves are not a problem. It's just getting carried away. So we just get in the habit of trying not to get carried away. If we do, we just keep coming back, and then over time, we'll be able to be more and more present and not get carried away. So that'll take time. That's okay. We just need to practice. That's all.
How do you see the connection between practicing shamatha meditation and curing or avoiding physical disease?
And what, sorry?
Curing or avoiding physical disease.
Right. I think quite a number of modern day problems in the body are originated in the mind. That maybe we have an anger issue and we're suppressing that. And that often manifests as a lot of physical problems in the body, stomach, neck problems and so forth. So what probably you'll find is particularly if you're suppressing a lot of mental things that cause physical illness, simply doing the shamatha practice and not suppressing, you may find that that will reduce, that your health will improve because of the lack of suppression of these things mentally. So yes, that can have a very much helpful impact. And also shamatha practice, I think, in terms of at a more subtle level, balancing subtle energies in the body, also I think will have some, at a more subtle level, health benefits as well.
Isn't shamatha meditation is more suppressing emotions because
Shamatha is all about not suppressing emotions. If we're suppressing emotions, we're not doing shamatha practice. I mean, suppressing is what we do now. Particularly in the practice tomorrow that we're going to do, observing the mind, where one of the side benefits of that is that we stop suppressing our thoughts and emotions and memories. That's one of the side benefits of tomorrow's practice.
I used to meditate focusing on the nostrils, and then I met a teacher who really insisted that you have to start from the belly. Like, really fought with me on it, and then I started to try to focus on the belly. It doesn't work as well for me until this day. But then I always have like an inner conflict. Like I want to go back to the nostrils, but then I wonder like if I'm being lazy.
Yeah. No. I mean, I don't know who this teacher was, but sometimes particular Buddhist traditions, in particular in this case, some tend to emphasize more abdomen and some more nostrils. And sometimes it's a little bit due to the approach to practice, but also sometimes it's just simply because their teacher taught them that. There's a sort of a tradition in that of using the abdomen or the nostrils, and so then them as the teacher, because that's what their lineage is taught, then they sort of pass that on because it works. So but I think another reason that sometimes teachers in the modern world may recommend more the abdomen than the nostrils is because, as I said, in our modern world, we usually have a lot of tightness and tension. And I know from personal experience that focusing here, even if you, with clarity, if you have tightness and tension, particularly if you do a lot of this meditation with some tightness and tension, you get all sorts of problems. Now, if we just do a little bit, 20 minutes a day, we focus here with clarity, a little bit of tension, and that's all we do, then probably not much is going to happen. But if we do a meditation retreat, and we're focusing here, hour after hour after hour, day after day after day, there will be a build-up effect. Then there's going to be difficulties. So, but again, if you can focus here in a relaxed way, I don't see any need to go to the abdomen.
How do you know the difference, like when to? I think the thing I'm struggling with is understanding when I'm not being lazy.
Lazy in what
Yeah,
sense?
Because in the sense that I'm trying the abdomen,
Right.
and it's not working as well. And
Right. Then I mean, then just stay with the nostrils. It's not a matter of being lazy. I mean, it's a matter of being as effective and efficient as possible. And so, if you find that the nostril works better, just stay with the nostrils. Okay. What I'd like to do now is have a look at this chart here, and hopefully get a little bit more practical advice for us in this shamatha practice. So this is a windy road with 9 sort of stages to shamatha. Shamatha is in the middle at the top here. And again, if we go right down the bottom, we see the meditator down the bottom here with a rope in their left hand. This is the rope of mindfulness. So this is the main tool of shamatha practice, to tie our mind with the rope of mindfulness to the object. And then we have the hook of introspection, which is quality control, is monitoring that mindfulness. How are we going? Are we becoming dull or distracted? And then correcting that. And as I said already, that the elephant is the mind. The fact that it is black is symbolizing dullness. The monkey is conceptual thought in general. The black color is symbolizing this excitement, the most common form of distraction. So again, is conceptual thought in general, discursive thought, just thinking. And the black color is that the excitement, we're pulled away by the sense distractions. And at the first stage here, settling the mind or setting the mind, what we see here is the elephant and monkey are running wildly ahead of us. So as I mentioned already, the first stage of progress is simply noticing how chaotic and out of control our mind really is. So at the first stage of practice, maybe we can hold the object for 2 or 3 seconds, and then we're distracted for long periods of time. And when we come back, maybe another couple of seconds, and then gone again. So that is the first stage of practice. And then if we go around the corner here, the second stage, we see now the elephant and monkey are not running so fast anymore, and they have a little bit of white on the top of their head. So at this second stage, which is called continuous setting, that white is symbolizing stability and clarity. So now our mind is becoming a little bit more stable, a little bit more clear, meaning we can focus on the object a little bit longer. Maybe even we can focus on the object for up to a minute or two. But still, when we get distracted, we tend to be distracted for long periods of time. If we continue to practice, we go around the corner here, and in the next stretch of road, this is called the road of mindfulness, because now by stage 3 and 4, our mindfulness is getting a lot better. So by stage 3 here, now we can focus on the object longer periods of time, maybe 5 or 10 minutes before we're distracted. And now when we're distracted, we quickly recognize that and quickly come back to the object. And that's symbolized by the elephant turning the head backwards, meaning we quickly come back to the object. And so now we see the rope of mindfulness is tied to the elephant of the mind, meaning mindfulness is getting a lot better. Now, though, at stage 3, we see the rabbit has come into the picture on the back of the elephant. So the rabbit is symbolizing what's called subtle dullness or subtle laxity. And that is that by stage 3, now we can focus on the object quite well. We can hold it quite well for longer periods of time. And if we get distracted, we quickly come back. So mindfulness is getting a lot better. But still, the quality of our focus needs a lot of work. So of course, initially at stage 1 and 2, most of the time we're distracted, completely distracted from the object. By stage 3, now we can hold the object longer, and when we're distracted, we quickly recognize and come back. But even when we're holding the object, then what often happens is that, let's say we're focusing on the breath, then actually what's going on is we're sort of focusing on the breath a little bit, but most of our attention is caught up in some sort of distraction. Maybe we're thinking about dinner or something else. So that's the main thing we're focusing on, but a little bit in the corner of our mind, we're sort of still holding on to the breath. We haven't lost it completely. So that happens certainly here at stage 3 and stage 4. In stage 4, we can hold the object the entire session without ever completely losing it. But still, we need a lot of work to do on the quality of our attention. So even though we never completely lose the object at stage 4, again, it could be that the main focus is on some other story we're caught up in, but a little bit in the corner of the mind, we're still kind of holding on to the breath. So therefore, what we want to do is improve the quality of attention. And that's what we're doing over stage 5 and 6. So here at stage 5 and 6, we see now the hook of introspection is more prominent, meaning now we are fine-tuning the quality of our attention. In the first few stages, introspection's main job was to notice when we're completely distracted or we're half asleep and to come back to the object. But now we never, stage 5, or even at stage 4, but we never lose the object completely. But we're trying to fine-tune our focus. And the analogy given here is like the analogy of a guitar string. If a guitar string is too tight or too loose, it doesn't play well. Likewise, if our mind is too tight or too loose, it doesn't focus well. So over stage 5 and 6 here, we are fine-tuning our focus. Meaning if we're getting a little bit dull, we're sharpening the focus. We're getting agitated a little bit, we're relaxing the focus. And so this is what we're doing over stage 5 and 6. And then what we see here by the end of stage 6 around to stage 7, the rabbit has disappeared, we're saying goodbye to the monkey, and there's hardly any black left on the elephant. So by the time we get to stage 7, now we can focus very well on the object, and if we have noticed any little hint of subtle agitation, subtle dullness, we can immediately dispel it. And then at stage 8, we see there's no black left on the elephant and the monkey's gone, which means on stage 8, all we need to do is to put a little bit of effort to start the meditation, and then the meditation just runs spontaneously without effort, and we have no little hint of subtle agitation or subtle dullness. We're 100% on the object. And then when we get to stage 9, which is the meditator and the elephant in the cave there, now the whole practice becomes spontaneous, that we can effortlessly slip into meditation and effortlessly focus on the object without any little hint of agitation or dullness. And we can do that here for at least 4 hours. But then we still haven't got to shamatha. Shamatha is the next diagram in the middle. We see there two things. We see the person flying through the sky, and we also see the person riding on the back of the elephant of the mind. So this is symbolizing what's called physical and mental pliancy. We briefly mentioned that earlier, that this is flexibility or serviceability of body and mind. And this diagram in the middle is representing the shamatha, result of shamatha, this single point of concentration. So how do we get from stage 9 to shamatha? Again, I'd like to read a little bit here from this book, Attention Revolution by Alan Wallace, and see what he says here. He says, following the realization of the 9th stage of attentional balance, you are primed to achieve shamatha. The 9 preceding stages entail many incremental changes, but the actual accomplishment of shamatha involves a radical transition in your body and mind. You will be like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. This shift is characterized by specific experiences that take place within a discrete, relatively brief period of time. According to the Indo-Tibetan tradition of Buddhism, the first sign of the achievement of shamatha is the experience of a sense of heaviness or numbness on the top of the head. This allegedly happens to anyone who experiences this transition, regardless of the specific method followed. It is said to feel as if a palm were being placed on the top of your head. It is not unpleasant or harmful, just unusual. Something remarkable must be taking place in the cortical region of your brain at this point. But so far, no one has monitored the brain correlates of this shift using magnetic resonance imaging or an electroencephalograph. This physical sensation on the top of the head is symptomatic of a shift in your nervous system, which is correlated with gaining freedom from mental dysfunction, a general state of mental imbalance characterized by stiffness, rigidity, and unwieldiness. Consequently, you achieve a state of mental pliancy in which your mind is fit and supple like never before. From a contemplative perspective, when the mind is dysfunctional or prone to laxity and excitation,